So fiber optic connections pretty much look like this, or this, or that. By the time we're done here, we will examine the common interface connection standards for fiber optic cabling. So the fact is, there are many different kinds of connections that relate to fiber optic cable. And it's not just because of politics or because people are dumb, although that has some things to do with it. It's because that the physical environments that fiber cabling is in is different. The key that you need to know is that there are different connection types, and it's really important that you get the right one. There's nothing worse than flying out to do a network deployment only to realize on the day it's supposed to wrap up that you've got the wrong cable with the wrong interface types. And you're like, oh, immediately you now go back to the drawing board. You have to ship in new. It's a nightmare. So here's what they are. Right here is the vast majority of different fiber connectors that exist. And you might say, well, a plug is a plug, right? No, it is not. A cable is a cable. Single mode, multi-mode. We talked about that in a different video. But the connector is different, and that matters. So just to give you the big picture of things, a lot of times you'll have buildings connected by fiber optic cable or just distant rooms. And what people will do is install a fiber patch panel like this. So here's, let's just say your MDF in your main building is right here. And that links to, let's just say, a far away building. Maybe it's a mile or a kilometer away into another, we'll call this the MDF of the building over there. There's your fiber optic cable between them. What you'll see oftentimes is something in the rack. It mounts right in there that slides out. It's a tray where the cables coming in from the conduit and underground come up and terminate right here into a fiber patch panel. Now, one of the key things to realize is that fiber is not like copper in the sense that copper cabling, Ethernet cabling, has 8 individual wires inside of there, each one with their own special purposes. It can even do power over Ethernet and send electricity down those lines. Fiber will do no such thing. Fiber has 2 ends of every connection, one receive and one transmit. So when you look at a fiber patch panel, every 2 of these will be for an individual connection. And I know some of you are like, I'm doing the math and I'm kind of carrying the one. What's up with that? Well, a lot of times when people run the cables, you're probably thinking exactly where this goes, right? When people run the cable, they go, well, let's run an extra one just in case we have a bad cable. You know, one of these gets damaged. You don't want to have to then fish a whole new set of cables. As a matter of fact, you may only have one connection between them and they run 5 cables. One complete spare set and then a spare wire that you can jump it over to on each side of the connection. Usually, the end of the fiber patch panel will be an ST connector type. That's these guys right here. You see, first off, these are, getting blurry. These are a twist lock where they can actually come on there, twist and go click, and it actually locks in place. Do you see what I mean by needing the different fiber physical standards for the different physical environment? A patch panel, you just want that thing cranked on there and locked, not so much a click on, click off as you go between interfaces. That's the other side of the connection. No, and I want to make sure you guys catch. You can have 2 different connection types per cable. This is ST connection. This is LC. This is the one that actually plugs into the switch itself. Now, all of these things, you see the little caps. These caps are important. They protect it from any kind of dust or stuff getting inside of that cable and messing up your connection. And that does happen. It's really important to keep them covered when you're not using them and they're not connected to an individual interface. So when you go to buy a cable, you can buy an ST to an LC connector. So this would go from the patch panel into the switch, and then you have your multi-mode, your single mode, and you have your varying length of cable that you would choose to use. Do you see why this can get so complex? You have to think before you do one of these deployments, what connector's up there? What connector's right there? What kind of cable is it? And then how far apart are those? And order exactly the cable type that you need. A lot of these other cable types that are out there, you'll rarely see. And as a matter of fact, these were one of the, these are actually, I've got one of these right here. This is an older switch. This is the SFP. Oh, actually, it's right on my slide. I should talk about these. This is the SC connector, and you can see it's a little bit bigger, kind of fatter. This is the one that goes to these kind of. This is an SC connector type where I would plug those in one by one into that SFP, right? So this is when switches were a little bit bigger. Just about all of the switches that I've seen nowadays, modern times, use the smaller LC connector. And once again, an added layer of complexity. Distance is important. Cable type is important. Connector type is important. And then make sure you buy the right kind of SFP that also matches the cable type, the distance, etc., etc., etc. This is why people fear fiber. It's not something to be scared of. There's just so much nuance. There's so much like, oh yeah. You just have to have all your ducks lined up in a row. You'll find out later. I don't know why this pops in my head every time I think of fiber. VPN connections, that's encrypted connections between different locations typically, are actually really easy to configure. There's just so much nuance to them. You just have to make sure this and this and this and this and this all line up on that side and that side. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You need a good planning mind to get fiber right the first time. I threw this on here just for your own knowledge. If you want something awesome to do as soon as you're done listening to this video, because this video is awesome to do, go to YouTube and type in actually just type in fiber splice, fiber splicer, fiber splice. If you've never seen it happen, you should. It shows how you can take this device. It's usually tens of thousands of dollars, and actually bond two ends of a fiber connector together. Not connector, but fiber cable. So this is useful when you're actually running the cable and you get to the end. You either need to add a tip onto that, add your own connection, or you need to bond two pieces of cable together. First time I saw this, it was probably a good decade ago. I was actually at a condominium complex, and the guy was like, "I'm gonna splice some fiber," and I didn't even know it was a thing then. I was like, "Okay," and I'm watching this thing. It literally is a robot. It goes. You just go watch it on YouTube. It's amazing. Okay, really, the last thing I'm going to show you. Go to Google Images and type in DAC cable. That stands for Direct Attach Connection Cable. These are kind of the latest, greatest craze to hit the network world. Essentially, it is an SFP, meaning the component that you would buy for the switch, this thing, and it's just about always in that LC size, right? It's the SFP and the cable bonded together prefab from the factory. So instead of buying a cable, buying a right kind of SFP, making sure they all line up just right, that's a lot that can go wrong. You can buy a pre-made DAC cable, and that's really useful for stuff that's in the same rack. Like you've got two switches side by side, and you just want to plug them together with fiber optic DAC cable. And that takes care of the SFPs for both and the cable between them. They even have DAC copper cables as well, to where it's using copper cabling between them and uses the SFP port. They have DAC cables that go from switch to server, switch to router, switch to anything, right? You take that SFP port and you kind of blend it together all into one single cable. The only warning I'll give you before you just go buy a whole bunch of DAC cables is that you want to make sure the DAC cable is compatible with your device. Just because your device has an SFP port doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take every kind of DAC cable. Although you'll see when you look at DAC cables and you start clicking around, and you'll see, this one's for Netgear, Cisco, D-Link. It's a multi-vendor, multi-platform, as it should be. As you can imagine, I am just exploding with information on fiber. Best thing that you can do. I'm trying to wrap up. I can't even land the plane. Best thing that you can do is just go on a Google Land search. You don't have to buy a bunch of stuff. Just look at it. Look at fiber connections. Look at all the terms that I mentioned in here, and look at examples of how those connect. And matter of fact, in the next video, I'm going to show you using a lot of these cables to connect up our CCNA lab environment right behind me. For now, we have seen the different types of cable standards and cable connections for fiber optic cabling. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.